What's going on, guys? Andrew Piluk Hockey here, back again with another video. Today, we're bringing up more Toronto Maple Leaf trade news, a little bit of disappointing trade news, I guess you could call it, and a lot more talk about the potential moves and what the Leafs could do with their cap space and everything that's kind of going on right now. So if you guys are new here, make sure to like this video and subscribe. We're getting closer and closer to free agency, and that's when a lot of stuff happens. The draft, free agency, it all starts to make things go a little bit crazy, a little bit haywire, if you will. But the Maple Leafs are in a bit of an interesting position because we're kind of waiting on Mitch Marner, even though we know there's a good shot, pretty much 99% sure that he's not coming back. We're kind of waiting on John Tavares. There could be a bit of a snag there. I don't know if that's going to work out. Again, we're kind of waiting on that. And we're waiting on Matthew Knies. And we're going to kind of talk about that a little bit, but the reason why we're waiting on Matthew Knies is because there could be some problems when it comes to if the team wants him on a short-term deal or if they want him on a long-term deal. Maybe they're kind of far apart. We'll get to that in a later video as well. We've got so much to talk about, but we want to talk about trade because there's been some moves lately. We've seen teams like Seattle, Dallas has been making moves, Chicago. People are making trades now that the Stanley Cup Finals are over. It's almost like an unwritten rule, like teams wait until all teams are ready to make moves, which I think is stupid. You should just go for it, try to make your team better while you can. But we need to look at the Maple Leafs assets, and of course an asset is cap space if you're going to be taking on a bigger contract. But the reason why I want to show you these picks is important because they have a second this year, even though it's Florida's. They have a third. They have fifth, sixth, and seventh round picks. And then in the following years, the cupboards are kind of getting empty, but they still have a decent, and I say decent loosely, they have a decent amount of picks. And when it comes to trade pieces, you can see there's a lot of holes on this roster. I don't believe Ryan Reeves to be on the roster. David Kampf is an interesting name. Calle Jarnkrok, people have been saying Max Domi. I don't think that's going to happen. Morgan Rielly is a very interesting name. We've heard people try to say maybe Ekman Larson, and we'll get to that later. And then you've got guys in the minors. Easton Cowan, potentially. I don't know if they want to do something that big. And then, you're going to guys like Ben Danford, which I don't think they want to do that either. Cade Weber, I don't think they want to do that. So we're mostly looking at roster players and picks. And the reason why I bring this up is because of a trade that the Maple Leafs missed out on. And David Alter, reporting from the Hockey News, was talking about how the Maple Leafs were trying to reacquire Mason Marchment. And if you guys didn't know, Mason Marchment is a former Maple Leaf, and he just didn't really work out fully for the Maple Leafs, so they moved on from him. But he was traded from the Dallas Stars to the Seattle Kraken, and Mason Marchment would have been a perfect fit for this team. I believe he's on a deal that pays him like less than $4 million. He's on a pretty good deal. I could look it up while we're sitting here. I probably should have pulled that up before, but if the Maple Leafs were in on that, I'm okay with them going after guys like this because it was only a third and fourth round pick that Mason Marchment went from Dallas to Seattle for. And yeah, so $4.5 million for the Mason Marchment contract, and he's in his last year of that deal. I think it's a really good move for the Seattle Kraken. I don't really know what they're doing. I think a lot of people are kind of like, where are they going with this? He plays every position, but of course, he's probably stronger as a winger, I would say personally, but this would have been a perfect fit for the Maple Leafs. He's gritty, he's big, and we've seen him play with the Marlies. He had a little stint with the Maple Leafs as well. The guy just didn't work out with Toronto, and that's just what it is. He played in 4 games. He had an assist, but excuse me, still getting over a cough. This is why I brought up the Maple Leafs and their assets, because if teams are trying to clear up cap space going towards free agency, and for once the Maple Leafs actually have money because, they're not sure about Marner, Tavares, and Knies, like I've said, they've got to look for guys like a Mason Marchment around the league. And if they, by all accounts, they were trying to acquire him, it makes a lot of sense for them to keep trying to go after deals like this and trying to fill out roster spots via trade, because it's kind of been reported that the Maple Leafs aren't going to be trying to do a ton in free agency, that they're looking more towards the trade avenue rather than going for free agents that they could potentially overpay. I'm sure they're still in on guys like Bennett, even though he's more than likely staying in Florida. I'm sure that's going to be announced pretty soon. Apparently, they're interested in Aaron Ekblad. I don't really know. I don't really know why. If you already have Morgan Rielly and you're trying to eliminate him, maybe they're just looking for a right shot. I don't know. Eliminate him. Trade him. Sounds so ridiculous when you say eliminate, but you know what I mean. But it gets me to. It gets me to why are we not hearing more about the Maple Leafs maybe dangling mid picks with kind of middle of the pack prospects, or even a guy like Nick Robertson, if they feel like they're not going to keep him, if they trade his rights with mid-level picks in order to get guys that are similar to a Mason Marchment. We're not really hearing it, but what's happening a little bit here, and shout out to the NHL Rumor Report, this account has been posting like crazy. Elliot Friedman has been saying Toronto wildcard to replace Marner. Could they move a defenseman to get a forward? Now, sure, they could do that, but we're going to go back to the depth chart here, okay? So, out of everybody here, the Maple Leafs can't get rid of McCabe or Tanev. I don't think they can get rid of that. These are their guys right now. This is their shutdown pairing. These are the guys they're invested in. They want to make sure that these guys are sticking around. They acquired Brandon Carlo. He's a right-handed shot. I don't think they want to remove him. Simon Benoit is a perfect, bottom pairing defenseman. I don't think that they want to get rid of him. He fits their mold perfectly. And that kind of gives you Ekman Larson and Morgan Rielly. And I also don't think that they want to get rid of OEL. I think they like the way he played. He had his moments last year. I think he was much better in the Ottawa series rather than the Florida series. I think maybe he just didn't play as well. But Morgan Rielly is the most interesting name. And if the Maple Leafs are able to trade Morgan Rielly and replace him with, a cheaper defenseman that does similar things to him, that can play lower in the lineup, maybe something of that matter, and they put OEL with Carlo, which I'm not really sure I like that, but maybe they mix it up, they find somebody else that fits with Carlo, or they can do whatever. I'm not an NHL GM, but if it's true that the Maple Leafs might be looking to make a bigger splash, Morgan Rielly makes $7.5 million. He probably still has a lot of positive trade value. The guy is still a really good defenseman who puts up points, but he doesn't always perform in, the biggest games. And I know he's a good playoff performer, but is he worth $7.5 million if he's not, a number one power play defenseman, if he's not a number one penalty kill defenseman, and, he's not being the difference when it comes to the Stanley Cup playoffs? He isn't, scoring massive goals in Game 7. Again, the whole team isn't really doing that, but that's the point. They need to make changes. And I love Morgan Rielly. I'd love to have him back on this team. I wouldn't be upset if he was back. It's just if this report is that maybe they're trying to trade a defenseman to go after a forward, it seems like there's only really two options, and I don't think the Leafs are trying to get rid of OEL because I think they like that he's making $3.5 million and can kind of play anywhere. So it leaves you with Rielly, but he's got that full no trade, no move. We'll have to see if the Maple Leafs can be like, hey, man, we're kind of floating your name out there because we don't want you. And that's the business. And if he goes, well, I don't care, I'm staying, good for him. That's up to him. But again, if the Maple Leafs are going to go up to him and be like, look, we don't have a lot of spots for you. Berube doesn't have a lot of spots for you, which, again, could be completely wrong. And I'm not saying that this is true. But that's the only way I could see where Rielly's like, yeah, maybe I need to get out of here then because I want to play. And I want to play more than what I'm going to be given. And I'm worth more than that. Again, that seems like a really harsh way of doing it. But if the Leafs are trying to make changes and it comes at the expense of having to trade Morgan Rielly, again, I'm just spitballing here because I think a lot of people are thinking this as well. I know the Steve Dangle podcast has been talking about this for a while. It's a lot of money for Morgan Rielly, and the Maple Leafs kind of have a sweet spot of like less than $5 million for like the rest of their guys that are like pretty solid defensive defensemen. I think they want a cheaper puck moving guy. Morgan Rielly could be the odd man out. I don't know. Just spitballing, and I want your opinions down below. Could they trade Morgan Rielly for a significant forward? Could they package Morgan Rielly with picks for a significant forward? And then who would replace Morgan Rielly? Do you go out there and get a mid-level defenseman that can move the puck, can play on a second pairing, for like 5.5 or less? Again, yeah, that's a perfect world. But it would give the Leafs a little bit more flexibility, and it would give us an opportunity to see maybe there needs to be a culture shift on the blue line as well, because it's not changing in goal. There's big changes coming on the forward group, and the defense is kind of locked in. Hell, I mean, the Leafs love Philippe Myers. Maybe they just give him a shot to come up and play on the bottom pairing, and they move OEL up to the second pairing. Do I think that's great to start the year? No. But maybe then they go after a defenseman at the deadline. I don't know. We're spitballing here. So you guys let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. If you guys are new here, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Join the squad. The Leafs have a lot of decisions to make, and the clock is ticking. Peace.